Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our show. I'm Priyanka Anberg, and joining me as my co-host is Anwar Shada Jihan. Tonight's discussion is titled, as you can see, Sheikh Hasina's Historical Homecoming 2.0. Sheikh Hasina has been one of the most influential political figures in modern society of Bangladesh history. Her announced decision to return to Bangladesh has once again become the focus of national and international attention, raising important questions about politics, the rule of laws, democratic institutions, and the country's future. This evening, we'll explore the significance of her return from legal, political, and academic perspective. What does it mean for Bangladesh? What challenges and opportunities could lie ahead? And how this moment might reshape our country's future. We are delighted to be joined by our guest, Advocate Tapas Kantibal, an eminent lawyer and legal expert, as well as Dr. Molla Haq, lecturer and researcher fellow. Please welcome to our show.
Thank you.
To start with, I would like to introduce my co-host, Jihan Bhai. Jihan Bhai has fantastic some slides with absolutely perfectly data, as he always does in every show of ours. I would like him to actually go through the slides so we can watch how's it looking as of today, and then we will continue our discussions.
Thank you, Priyanka. And I would like to thank Dr. Molla Haq and Barrister Ball for both of your time. So what we are talking about today is not any legal brief, or it is not even a press release of Bangladesh Awami League. It is about a case for the return of women who has already rebuilt a nation. She has done it once from nothing, and she now stands again, ready to do it again. Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina is the daughter of Bangladesh's liberation. She is the daughter of the greatest Bengali of all time, Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. She led this country, Bangladesh, for more than 20 years. And today, a politically engineered band stands between her and the people that she loved, she cherished, and she governed. This presentation walks through why that ban should not be the final word and why the history says it won't be. Now, this is for her, this is not something new. She has done it before. In 1975, on that dark night of 15th August, Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina has lost her everything. Almost every living person of her family. Just think about it. If it was me or you and somebody ripping you or me of all my family, taking away all our family, what we would have done. Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina is more than a human. She forgot everything because her dad loved that nation and she does the same. After 6 years being in exile, not being able to even find a home because people were having hard time even renting her or her sister a home because they were the daughter of Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. Talk is cheap, we all can talk, but this is the real life scenario that this lady has faced. And then she was in exile for 6 years. In 1981, she returned to her home to rebuild a shattered, broken political party that would go on to create history. 5 times she won the national election of Bangladesh. Every inch of Bangladesh has her footstep. She went and she explored whole Bangladesh. She listened to the pain and about the poverty and pain of all Bangladeshis all across the country. She listened very carefully to the pain of her party members. And then she rebuilt that country. In 1996, she became the prime minister. And then again in 2008, she became the prime minister. A country that was known as a basket case by some so-called elite of the world became the champion of the world. The world was praising her. The world was praising Bangladesh. Then the catastrophe of August 2024 happened because there are some elements that don't want Bangladesh to stand up on its own. That has some problem with Bangladesh being independent, with Bangladesh being self-sufficient. Then we have July 2024. What happened in July 2024? We have to understand it. There were some issues. Students were protesting about some quotas. It is understandable. In a democracy, everybody has a right to demand. Students were demanding something. But unfortunately, this quota protest was seized by opposition forces and it was penetrated by trained militants. It was penetrated by national and international conspirators who don't want anything good for Bangladesh. Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina on August 5, in the face of a threat to her life and to the life of her only surviving member, Sheikh Rehana, both of them had to transfer or move over to a safe location where they can save their life because there is no point of losing life. Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina did not want to go. But when these extremist elements, terrorists that were proven terrorists and in jail, they confronted her to her house, she had to move to a safe location. And that's what exactly happened in August 5, 2024. She moved to a safe location. She retreated. In a war, there is something called strategic retreat. Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina did not flee as the opposition tries to portray it as. She retreated. And thanks to God that she is still alive. What happened afterwards? Afterwards, an unelected interim administration led by the so-called Nobel laureate, who has nothing Nobel about him, took over with no electoral mandate, no support of the people. He held on to power unlawfully for more than 2 years and then hold a sham election where by an unlawful executive ordinance, he kept her party banned from this election. Now we have a BMP government. The BMP government continues to follow this ban, unlawful ban on her party. Now, besides the ban, we have to see what's going on with her legally. What legal consequences she faces if she were to return. The whole judiciary of Bangladesh was overtaken by the extremist elements. Our prominent legal friend here, Dr. Ball, will have more to talk about it, the legal aspects of things. Now, who judged her? A court, a sham kangaroo court, appointed entirely by that unconstitutional interim government. All our prominent legal expert, judges, honorable judges, lawyers, in the face of threat to their lives, had to retreat to a safe location. So there is no court in Bangladesh today. This is a kangaroo court. A kangaroo court without giving her the proper defense rights that she has while she is in absentia, tried her and gave her a fake sham verdict, which has no meaning whatsoever. They said that she carries some sort of command responsibility of thousands of killings all across the country. Now, Priyanka, there is no practical way that one person can commit a murder or 10 murder at 10 different places at the same time. There is no way. Saqib Al Hassan, the greatest all-rounder of Bangladesh, while he was in Canada, did not commit that murder in Pabna. This is a sham. This is sham trial against Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina and all her party members. Even the worst of criminal has a right to a free trial. I'm sure that Barrister Ball will have more to talk about it. Now, what is the goal here? The goal is to erase the memory of 1971, is to erase the identity of Bangladesh, because Bangladesh is what 1971 is. Now, through an executive order, they have banned the party who gave birth to Bangladesh. And in February 12, 2026, they had to resort to this sham election, because when more than 60% of the population are with a particular party or a particular ideology, there is no other way to suppress them except to this unlawful ordinance and unjust action. Now we have to look at Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, who Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina is. Everything, she was a Prime Minister of 5 times, she was this and that, everything can be taken away from her. What cannot be taken away from her is her blood. She is the daughter of the greatest Bengali to ever exist in this world. She is the daughter of Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. She is the longest serving elected Prime Minister of Bangladesh. Bangladeshi people elected her 5 times to govern them. She took Bangladesh from a fruitless basket case to an role model of development. The world was praising her. All these elements that are against her were also praising her, because there is no explanation about her magic. She has an international standing. She has built all these international bonds. Malice towards none, friendship to all. This Bangabandhu's principle of diplomacy was cherished by her. Everybody is her friend. The problem of these elements were with the self-reliance of Bangladesh. They have a problem with Bangladesh being independent and being able to call Bangladesh's shots on their own. And that is why August 5 happened. Now, at the end of the day, what happens? Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina has declared that she is going to return and she will surrender with all her party members, whoever are in exile. Who is there to challenge her? See, in this presentation, I had another slide where I was going to talk about other historical precedents, about other historical leaders who were in exile and then came back. But then I thought, okay, wait a minute. Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina is history. She is the person who creates history. There is no other president that matches even close to her. Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina is going to create history once again. Because there are Priyanka, you, me, Dr. Molla, and Barrister Ball. There are millions like us who believe in her, who love her, who cherish her, because she is the daughter of Bangabandhu and she is the only one who can save Bangladesh. And we await the historical homecoming of Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina to save Bangladesh. Back to you.
Thank you, Jihan. It was a wonderful slide with so many important data and information that we always enjoy watching. So I would start with my first questions for Dr. Molla, for you. Sheikh Hasina has publicly announced her intention to return to Bangladesh. Why is this announcement politically significant? How would you explain that?
Thank you, Priyanka, for having me today, and thanks to all my discussion panelists for having me here today. Honorable Sheikh Hasina's decision to return to Bangladesh is incredibly fascinating and at the same time awfully terrifying. It's fascinating that she has the courage to face the accusers even when she has a death penalty on her head, and terrifying that anything can happen if she decides to return to Bidi. Let me explain. Bangladesh's politics since August 2024 has been built on the assumption that Sheikh Hasina and the Awami League are permanently sidelined. Her declaration that she plans to return to the country from exile in December, despite a death sentence passed during her 2-year stay in India, shatters that assumption. She isn't a symbolic gesture from the sidelines. She plans to return alongside senior officials from the Awami League to launch a challenge to the legal shattering of the party. Overnight, every political calculation in Dhaka, from the current government's strategy to the opposition's positioning to the shape of the upcoming politics, has to be redrawn around the possibility of her actual physical return. This also tests the current government's democratic credentials. This is really the crux of it. A government that claims to represent the restoration of democracy is now confronted with a very simple question. Will it allow a former prime minister and her party to exist, contest, and speak? Her promise puts the government in a bind: jail a formidable rival and risk unrest, or leave her free and risk an uprising. We can argue that how the government responds, repression versus due process, will reveal whether democratic restoration was ever more than rhetoric. It also draws international attention back to Bangladesh. Her announcement is not just a domestic story. It has been covered by Reuters, Al Jazeera, and nearly 200 plus other major outlets. And it directly involves India's position. External Affairs Minister S. Jaisankar made it very clear that Sheikh Hasina will only leave India when she wants to, despite repeated extradition requests from Dhaka. For supporters, this reinforces the argument that Sheikh Hasina's fate, and by extension, Bangladesh's democratic trajectory, is now a matter of regional and global diplomatic interest, not something the interim and current governments can quietly manage away from scrutiny. It is also a referendum on public confidence in institutions. Supporters can point to the tribunal verdict itself as an example of institutional breakdown. There are at least 600 plus criminal cases against her, including around 453 murder cases. The death sentence verdict is completely illegal, unconstitutional, and politically motivated, alleging the judiciary ran a kangaroo court where the lawyer appointed for Hasina was seen laughing after the death sentence verdict was passed. This branded the judiciary into an instrument of political revenge to make the Awami League leadless. Add to that the well-documented pattern of mass killing, including police killing, brutal mob violence, unnamed suspect prosecution, a campaign called Operation to hundreds of thousands of arrests, and supporters have already claimed that Bangladesh's courts, police, and prosecutional bodies have lost public as neutral actors. Her return in this framing forces citizens to ask whether they still believe these institutions serve justice to serve politics. It also reshapes the future of opposition politics entirely. If Sheikh Hasina returns and the Awami League ban is genuinely contested in court, the entire opposition landscape shifts. Right now, the field is dominated by BNP and the newer National Citizen Party. A revived Awami League re-enters as a major bloc, and Jamaat Islami and others have already raised alarm that this changes their own strategic position, reportedly questioning whether it signals an Awami League comeback. Supporters would frame this not as a threat, but as a correction. Genuine, competitive, multi-party democracy requires the country's largest and most historically rooted party to be allowed back into the arena. And its symbol is enormous. This is second homecoming. This is worth dwelling on. Sheikh Hasina previously returned to Bangladesh on 17th May 1981 after a long exile in India following the assassination of the father of the nation, Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, declaring that she came back to participate in the struggle for freedom by staying beside the people of the country. Awami League supporters commemorate this every year as Homecoming Day. 2026 return, framed the same way, deliberately positions her not as someone fleeing justice, but as someone repeating a defining act of political courage from her own family's history, returning to stand with the people, whatever the personal risk. And the interim government's US trade deal becomes a live issue again. Supporters can use Sheikh Hasina's return to reopen the controversy against the reciprocal trade agreement the interim government signed with Washington on 9th February 2026, just 3 days before the national election. Critics, including the trade economists and the High Court petition, argue that the pact imposes 131 conditions on Bangladesh, while the US is required to meet only 6, and that the interim government rushed to finalize this deal just before the election, locking in long-term commitments it will neither implement nor publicly defend. For supporters, this becomes powerful evidence for their argument and Bangladesh's and Sheikh Hasina's return reopens the door to challenge that deal on democratic and constitutional grounds. And we know the record mob violence and lack of law and order, it has been observed by everybody. Even Amnesty International has recently told the government to be careful about it. This has been one of the most emotionally resonant points of a party audience. Independent tallies and rights group described a sustained pattern of violence against Awami League figures since August 2024. Reports documented at least 300 plus Awami League leaders, activists, and supporters killed through mob lynchings, extrajudicial executions, and custodial deaths. With Prothomalo reporting 87 Awami League members and affiliates killed in just days amid widespread revenge attacks in the immediate aftermath. Human Rights Watch itself has documented ongoing unrest, and this has been happening. And the return of Sheikh Hasina will put the focus back into Bangladesh, and this might stop this mob lynching, mob violence, and illegal arrests of Awami League activists. So these illegal arrests and politically motivated detention and no bail has put Bangladesh's law and order in a very, very questionable situation. So supporters can point to the scale of detentions as evidence of government unwilling to tolerate opposition. Human Rights Watch reports hundreds of Awami League leaders, members, and opposition are custody as murder suspects held without trial and routinely denied bail, including actors, lawyers, singers, journalists, and political activists, with politically motivated and arbitrary detentions continuing under the interim government, including the practice of adding hundreds of unnamed individuals as suspects in criminal complaints. For a supporter, this pattern, mass unnamed prosecutions rather than individualized evidence, is itself an indictment of the current legal order, and Sheikh Hasina's return is framed as a direct challenge to it. Because she is in exile in India, she can't stay there due to the huge operation being held in Bangladesh at this moment. It is high time that she returns in Bangladesh. Thank you.
Thank you so much. While you were talking, I was actually thinking of another question that I would like to actually ask our lawyer, Taposh Kantibal. Taposh Bhai, I would like to ask you, how important is judicial independence in politically sensitive cases, and what would constitute a fair legal process look like? As well as, I would like to throw another one, it's quite related, just so you have a bit of more space to give us an answer. From a constitutional and legal perspective, what right does Sheikh Hasina retain as a Bangladeshi citizen despite the charges against her? These two.
First of all, if I summarize the first question,
Yeah.
then I would say that you wanted to know that what kind of rights
Yeah.
there is under the Constitution and under international law, right? So the question is quite direct, the answer is quite direct. Because why direct? Because first of all, she is a human being, right? And then she is a citizen of Bangladesh, and then she is not an ordinary citizen of Bangladesh. She is the Prime Minister of Bangladesh. And as Mr. Jihan has put forward, that she is the dreamer or architect of new Bangladesh. So, which is without any doubt that she will enjoy the constitutional rights, the rights enshrined in the international law, and then some. Now, what is there in the international law at first? It is everyone has the right to be treated with dignity. The human dignity is the core basis of all the laws in the world. That as soon as she returns home, from the moment she steps on an airplane to land in Bangladesh, she has to be treated with dignity. She has to be treated as a human being. Nobody cannot disrespect her figure, her position, herself. Like if there is anyone who is trying to throw something at her or try to attack her, the state has the responsibility to protect her. Right? So the first thing is human dignity. You cannot, like for example, even if when she is walking, getting out of the airport, you cannot hurl any ill words towards her, because that will be a violation of human dignity. So you cannot do anything. You have to protect everything surrounding her. The second thing is, which is the again a very basic and primary thing, is the protection of right to life. She has the right to life. It is not only in our constitution in Article 31, it is also, you will find in the UDHR, Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and you will also find it in other Bill of Rights, which is International Covenant of Economic, Social and Cultural Rights, and the civil and political rights. In both the conventions, you will find this right to life. So the state has to ensure everything that is attached to her life. There is this famous judgment in Bangladesh, which we all know as FAP 20 case. In this case, it was decided by the Supreme Court of Bangladesh that what it means, or how to define life, how the state should protect life of a person. That, for example, if you need medical care, it has to be provided. If you need lawyers, if you need books, if you need air, if you need food, anything and everything, and even the government is bound to provide her with a shelter or a house which is protective of her and which ensures her dignity, as I said at first. So all these things has to be provided, and including security. They have to provide enough security so that she is never treated unfairly, or her right to life is never threatened. The next right that is much more important is right to be treated equally and equitably, that she cannot be treated less than anyone else. Whatever the citizens of Bangladesh enjoys, she will be treated in that way. That means that she will enjoy the rule of law and the rights of natural justice. I mean, we can say 1,000 lines about a judgment being passed against her by a kangaroo tribunal, but the state has to prove that this judgment is not provided by a kangaroo tribunal. If Sheikh Hasina questions the validity of this judgment, then definitely there has to be another chance to take this trial afresh. It has to be organized afresh. She can even question the investigation report. She can question the formation of the judges, the formation of the prosecution and the investigation team, and she can question their biasness, their political belief, and why they are targeting her. She will enjoy all these facilities and all these rights afresh. So, given this, then I think it makes it a lot more clearer that what kind of rights she will enjoy. Not only these, like if she wants a lawyer team, a team of lawyers of her own choosing, then she will get it. The state is bound to provide them the visa required if they are foreigners. If they need permission before the Bar Council, the court will ensure, the state will ensure that they get permission from the Bar Council, so then she can be duly represented before the tribunal. So, saying all these, the question is that whether Bangladesh as a state under BNP and Jamaat will ensure all these things, whether they will commit to the promises they have made under international treaties and conventions. I doubt, like anyone else, that they will follow it. They will never follow it. They already, you see, that this says that the declaration by Sheikh Hasina that she will return to Bangladesh in December has definitely made them fear. They're trembling in fear. And in fear, what they are trying to do is that they are trying to get united, all of them together. You will see that they are trying to reply in unison. People are saying, like law minister today said, okay, we are waiting for her. And then the pets of BNP and Jamaat, NCP and AB party, they are saying, okay, we will not allow her to return. So this is a totally tag of war going on between them, that what they will do and what kind of rights they have to ensure. Because you see, under international law, when you sign these UDHR, ICCPR and ICSCR and other like convention against torture, everything, then you have to follow by the book. You cannot go back. You have to remember that Awami League is the only political party who, when came into power, ensured that Bangladesh participates in Universal Periodic Review, which is known as UPR, right? Every 4 years, you have to go back to the UN and reply to the wrongs you have done back home. And if you ever have the chance, like I had one chance to participate in a UPR session, all the countries of the world, they have a list of questions they are waiting to ask you. They have 2 minutes each, and for 2 minutes, they will question you on anything. They can even humiliate you for the decisions you have taken. For 2 minutes, they have the floor, and you have to reply to those questions. So after the return of Hasina, if there is a UPR session, in my understanding, the next UPR session will be in 2027. So next year there will be a UPR session. So in that UPR session, definitely Bangladesh government have to reply a lot, including the banning of Awami League, including filing all these cases against their political leaders and activists, and killing the police and killing Awami League leaders and those who believe in the high ideals of liberation of Bangladesh. Saying that, I will stop. Probably if I've missed anything, I will add in the next slot.
Of course. Thank you, Dr. Shoaib. So my next one will go to Dr. Mollahak, to you. Historically, many political leaders have returned from exile. What lesson can Bangladesh learn from those experiences, if you have anything to say about that?
Thank you, Priyanka, for your good question. Look, Honorable Sheikh Hasina's situation is very unusual and unique, but it isn't unprecedented. She was tried in absentia and sentenced to death by the International Crimes Tribunal, a court she herself helped establish, and has now announced she will return to Bangladesh despite that verdict. History offers a range of parallels, from the leaders who returned facing death sentences directly to leaders who returned from exile more broadly and had to rebuild a fractured nation. Together, they offer Bangladesh 5 clear lessons. Number one, political reconciliation, the difference between healing and revenge. The starkest and closest parallel to Sheikh Hasina's own situation is the Bhutto family of Pakistan. Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, founder of Pakistan's People's Party, was removed in 1977 coup and executed by hanging in 1979 after a trial widely described as unfair and politically driven. His daughter, Benazir Bhutto, returned from exile in 1986 to challenge the military dictatorship that had killed her father. A homecoming that revived her party and eventually carried it to power in 1988. Contrast that with Nelson Mandela, who returned to full political life after 27 years in prison and chose the Truth and Reconciliation Commission over the retribution against the state that had jailed him. Or South Korea's King Dae-jung, who survived exile and imprisonment before pursuing his sunshine policy of reconciliation even with former adversaries. The lesson for Bangladesh cuts both ways. where a nation chose retribution, as with Bhutto's execution, it produced generations of unresolved grievances rather than closure, where a nation eventually chose reconciliation, as with Mandela and King Kim Dae-jung, it built something durable. Activists should be honest, and reconciliation is a two-way obligation. It requires the current government to stop treating an entire political tradition, the Party of Liberation War, as permanently illegitimate, but it also requires the Awami League itself, upon return, to choose healing over settling scores. So democratic resilience, it tests either break or strengthen a system. In Banijit Bhutto's story, it continued beyond 1986, facing renewed threats. Years later, she returned again in 2007, despite the danger, and was assassinated shortly after. Similarly, in Philippines, it offers a related lesson from different angle. When Benigno Aquino returned from exile in 1983 and was assassinated on the airport tarmac, many expected deeper authoritarian to follow. Instead, his death triggered the peaceful 1986 People Power Revolution, proving that a society's democratic instincts can prove more resilient than its worst moment. So here, the question comes whether it will be a peaceful transition or there will be a negotiated middle path. Not every case ends in tragedy or triumph. Some produce working compromise, like Thailand's Thaksin Shinawatra, convicted in absentia on corruption charges he called politically motivated. He spent 15 years in exile before returning in 2023, entering custody and eventually being paroled while remaining a major political figure. Even further back, Jean Bedel Bokaz's in absentia death sentence was reduced on appeal once he actually returned and re-entered a functioning legal process. Neither case is a clear model or clean model for Bangladesh, but both demonstrate that an in absentia verdict delivered amid intense political upheaval does not have to be the final word. It can be the beginning of a legal process rather than its end if the receiving state allows one. So South Africa's own transition reinforces this, that Mandela's release happened only after protracted negotiation between the apartheid government and the ANC, not as a single dramatic event. A negotiated, gradual process rather than an imposed one is a large part why South Africa avoided civil war. Similarly, in Bangladesh, if we want to avoid civil war, there has to be a middle path with the current government and Awami League. There has to be a middle path. Activists can point out that Sheikh Hasina's stated plan to return voluntarily and present herself in court rather than force her way back into the power mirrors the same choice of the harder, more democratic path. Whether Bangladesh's institutions meet her halfway, the way Thailand and South Africa eventually did, will determine whether this becomes a peaceful transition or another chapter of confrontation. And there is a talk about institutional maturity. The real test is in the leader, is the system. So across every one of these cases, the outcome was determined less by the returning leader than by the maturity of the institutions receiving them. Congo's Joseph Kabila continues organizing opposition politics from exile, despite an active death sentence for treason and war crimes. A reminder that suppressing a political figure through an in absentia verdict rarely makes their movement disappear. It just pushes the confrontation elsewhere. South Africa's post-apartheid constitutional court, by contrast, matured into a genuinely independent check on power. And South Korea's judiciary eventually became capable of holding and even former presidents accountable through fair process rather than verdicts. So national unity is very important in this case. A nation cannot be built by erasing a major political party or political tradition, a party that led this country into independence. So the deepest lesson, and the one that ties all the others together, comes from Pakistan's long aftermath. Executing or permanently exiling the leadership of a major political party does not produce unity. It manufactures grievance across generations. Mandela's Rainbow Nation succeeded precisely because it made room for former adversaries inside one democratic framework rather than declaring one side permanently beyond the pale. So for Bangladesh, the Awami League is not a fringe movement. It is a party of the liberation war, representing millions of citizens whose own history and identity are bound up with it. Activists can argue that no genuine vision of national unity is possible while an entire party and its base remain excluded from political life by force. The path forward, drawing on the more helpful precedents, Thaksin's negotiated middle ground, Mandela's inclusive settlement, South Africa's patient institution building, is to bring the Awami League back into the constitutional fold through a fair, credible legal process, not to treat an in absentia death sentence as the final chapter of the story. So I believe I have given you enough sort of precedents from the history of other countries where there are many ways. There is many ways. Sometimes it is harder way, sometimes it is easier way, sometimes it is the middle path. But eventually, it worked out when the power or the judiciary made it very legal. It's fair for the other party. Without a fair system, fair judiciary system, it is not going to work out for anybody. Thank you, Priyanka.
Thank you, Mullah. Really very thorough and very important information you have shared with us. I really hope everybody that is watching here paying attention what you are trying to get through, and they would think of it and being curious and would want to learn more. My next question I would like to ask my co-host Jihan Bhai. Jihan Bhai, I would like to know from you, what impact could Sheikh Hasina's return have on Bangladesh's political environment, especially among our younger generations?
Thank you, Priyanka. So it's an important question. What effect it will have on Bangladesh and especially us, the younger generation? So let me start with the political participation, because since August 2024, not one or two, but multiple generations of Awami League supporters have been told that your party does not exist, you don't have a right to speak, or you don't have a right in politics. So when Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina declared that she will return soon, it gives us, millions of Awami League supporters, a hope. We suddenly have a new leader. Not a new leader, I mean the leader we already have. But she is, with her message, showing millions of people that we are not leaderless, we have a leader. And this talks about political participation. So this millions of Awami League supporters, generations of Awami League supporters will not be left without a leader. We still have Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina with us. Now, Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina is not a regular leader. She is people's leader, that people call her. And people call her people's leader for a reason. Sheikh Hasina's return would pressure the whole country, would pressure the whole system and say that Awami League is still here. And then now let's go to the other aspect of public discourse, because right now there are two cousins. I call them cousins, PMP and Jama, or like stepchildren of a parents. They are the same thing, you know. They are bred from the same seeds. There is no Awami League. So in the public discourse, the debate that we are seeing now is not a complete debate. No matter whether you hate her or love her, Sheikh Hasina is still here. And Sheikh Hasina is here to return. When she will return, the talk shows will not be among like ourselves or among themselves. There will be a real chance of debate, which does not exist now. Because we are forced, like the program that we are having now, Priyanka, you told me before the program that you have multiple charges against you, right? So this is no public discourse, this is no debate.
Correct.
When we have the fair shots at debating, this is when the public discourse gets real. And now let's talk about youth engagement, because this whole protest and the change of government in Bangladesh was brought upon by the youth of Bangladesh. But the majority of the youth are forced out from even engaging in politics. Hundreds of thousands of students are ripped off their academic credentials. They are not able to participate in their school. People are dying, people are being raped. So the youth of Bangladesh, more than 60%, are forced out from participating in the politics. And with that declaration of Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina's return, all these youths are again getting a voice. And then we can come to polarization. We cannot have polarization among the stepchildren of the same parents, BNP and Jamaat, when Awami League is absent. Awami League is absent by an unlawful executive ordinance, because the goal here is to remove our national identity, the national identity of Bangladesh. The national identity of Bangladesh is created, was given birth by Bangladesh Awami League. Bangladesh Awami League gave birth to Bangladesh. Awami League is not just a party, it's the party that led the liberation war in 1971. So what we are seeing today is, we have talked about it so much, but we will continue to talk about it because our identity is under attack. And the only person who can save our identity is Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. So Priyanka, Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina's return means everything. It means everything for the youth. It means everything for the rickshaw puller, for the farmer, or for the general citizen of Bangladesh, because she is Bangladesh. And she will again come back and take us and take Bangladesh to that 2041 dream of being a golden Bengal. Bangabandhu's Sonar Bangla. Back to you.
Thank you, Janai. I would like to go with my next question to Taposh Bhai, to you. So here is what I'm thinking. If Sheikh Hasina returns voluntary, what legal and constitutional precedents could that establish for future political transitions in Bangladesh?
As I explained to you earlier, that I don't see that the present constitution getting changed or amended by the time Sheikh Hasina returns to Bangladesh. I don't see that, because one of the main reason is that BNP understands, even if loosely, that this constitution is a safeguard for them as well. If the constitution is changed, Jamaati Islami will just simply engulf not only BNP, the whole country. So, and they understand that this constitution is the only yardstick and the sword that is protecting them, and the shield that is protecting them from any sort of Islamic attack on the constitution, on the country, on the sovereignty of the country. So what I'm saying, why I'm saying this is that, so if the constitution remains unchanged and the major laws are in place, then in the future, just after returning her, I don't see any shift in the law, because they cannot just, if they make any shift in the law, which is already there, then it is quite clear that they will persecute Sheikh Hasina and they will be changing all those things for her. But if they can change it positively towards maintenance of rule of law, to destroy the existing culture of impunity and to ensure natural justice, then that would be welcome. For example, what kind of positive changes that I can think of is that they can ensure the retrial of all, not only of Sheikh Hasina, but all the political leaders, all the cultural activists, journalists, and everything, by releasing them on bail and ensuring their security, and then asking them for a trial. If the political change, if you ask me, that I don't believe in any trial for July and August 2024, because what happened in July 2024, that has to be defined as well. Because Jamaat version is that this is a crimes against humanity. Our version is somewhat non-international armed conflict to a coup, a military coup that took place in 2024. So that has to be defined first. And when we are going to define first, we will find out that there were countrymen who were fighting against each other from an ideological perspective. For example, Jamaat was Jamaat and other Islamist political parties, they were terrorists, right? So they were doing terrorist activities. They were threatening general people. They were threatening public properties like Bangladesh television building, or Mayor Hanif flyover, metro rail, things like that. So in this situation, what is the duty of the law enforcing agencies? The primary duty of the law enforcing agency is to protect them. So they have used all the legal mechanisms in their hand to protect the fellow countrymen and the public properties. And while doing that, they at times had to take harsh measures. But if you follow the events, you will see that at every single time there was executive magistrate with the police, with the army, with the BDR, which is the norm in Bangladesh, that if you want to use any lethal weapon, you have to take permission from the executive magistrate. So you have taken permission from the executive magistrate, and you have used lethal weapon in certain circumstances. So this whole non-international armed conflict scenario, and now there are news coming out that cantonment was involved, especially Bangladesh army was involved in this whole coup. So we need to decide the role of every party, and you cannot do that through a trial, right?
Barrister Ball, let me interfere here for a quick second. I will also throw a question here. Sorry for that. So when your life is under attack, you are not gonna love the attackers. You have to defend yourself, and that's what the military and others are doing. But my question is that, are there any legal tools available to bring those perpetrators from the military and the law enforcement into action who violated their constitutional duty?
Yes, definitely. I mean, without any doubt, that's what I'm saying, that you can bring all the parties under a legal umbrella. But before going into some sort of trial, you have to ascertain the roles played by political parties, by the law enforcers, the general people. So because and for that, you cannot do it through a trial. You will need a Truth and Reconciliation Commission. You look at Nepal, after their revolution or whatever you call it. I'm sorry, because of the World Cup, the festivity has started just outside my window. I cannot get rid of that. But I'll be very brief, that Truth and Reconciliation Commission, where peacefully all the parties can sit together and share their responsibilities, that what they have done, why they have done, and through that you can find out the main perpetrator, and only then you can make them to face the trial. That is the only thing that I can think of. I will stop here because of the noise outside. Thank you for having me and asking these very pertinent questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Taposh Bhai. And I can imagine that we're closing down to the game, but I will try to hurry. We're also end of our show. My last questions will be, Mullah Bhai, for you. How might Sheikh Hasina's return affect Bangladesh's international image and diplomatic relationship?
Thank you, Priyanka, for a very nice question. I would like to actually, before answering this question, I'd like to add with Jihan Bhai's point. I think the youth in Bangladesh, they feel betrayed, completely betrayed. They have been deceived. And now everywhere they have been telling that we want Sheikh Hasina back. You must have heard recently the student protest against the education minister. They have been telling that we do not want them anymore. And we were deceived in thinking Sheikh Hasina was bad. We want the previous education minister, Dipu Muni, back. So I don't know whether you have heard this, but the youth in Bangladesh, they're actually waking up. They're saying that we have been deceived and we want Sheikh Hasina back. Anyway, coming back to the answer of your question. Look, Sheikh Hasina's return and Bangladesh's international image has a lot at stake. Bangladesh's standing in the world has never simply been about GDP figures or diplomatic photo ops. It has always rested on a narrative, the story of a nation that fought for its independence, built a garments export economy from nothing, and gradually earned a reputation as a functioning democracy in the South Asia. Sheikh Hasina's decision to return, despite an in absentia death sentence, forces the world to look at the narrative again. And an Awami League activist would argue that what the world is currently seeing is not assuring. The rule of law, a credible problem for Bangladesh government, it cannot outsource at the moment. The Bangladeshi state is currently trying to have it both ways. Internationally, it wants recognition as a country restoring the rule of law, while simultaneously asking a neighboring country to extradite a former head of government under a death sentence delivered in absentia. Dhaka has invoked its 2013 extradition treaty with India and called New Delhi's continued hosting of Hasina a grave act of unfriendly behavior and even a travesty of justice. So we, the activists, can point out the irony. A government demanding international legal cooperation is the same government whose own tribunal process has been criticized by rights group and legal observers for fairness concerns in trying and sentencing a defendant who was never present to mount a defense. So when Sheikh Hasina returns and stands before the same tribunal in person, the world's legal community, not just Bangladeshi partisans, will finally get to scrutinize whether rule of law in Bangladesh means blind justice or victor's justice. And at the same time, human rights, the government doesn't have a very good record about human rights at this moment. So this is why the interim turned elected government has arguably done the most damage to Bangladesh's image, independent of anything Sheikh Hasina does. Amnesty International Secretary General has directly warned Bangladesh's leadership about failing to uphold basic rights, citing the misuse of anti-terrorism laws against journalists and the government's weak response to violence against minorities, including the lynching of several Hindu men to death. Human Rights Watch has documented an alarming surge in mob violence and noted that thousands of perceived political opponents have been arbitrarily detained. Most strikingly, watchdogs have raised alarm over a draft National Human Rights Commission bill that critics say would strip the commission of its independence and explicitly bar it from investigating abuses by state security forces. Activists can also argue that Sheikh Hasina's return puts a spotlight squarely back on this record. Every act of violence or arrest that follows her return will be watched very closely by the same international bodies already on record raising concerns. So, and at the same time, the democracy's democratic reputation is at stake, an unfinished transition under global scrutiny. The interim government came to power promising a democratic reset. However, they failed. But international monitors have not simply issued a clean bill of health. Rights organizations have questioned whether the conditions for credible elections were actually met, and a party like the Awami League, representing a huge segment of the electorate, was banned from contesting entirely. Activists can make the case plainly. A democracy that excludes its largest opposition in waiting from the ballot is not the democratic renewal the world was promised in 2024. Sheikh Hasina's return and the legal fight over her party's ban that follows it will be read internationally as the real test of whether Bangladesh's democracy is being rebuilt or whether one form of dominant party politics is simply being replaced. And the relations with India is not going very well, an unavoidable diplomatic flashpoint. This is one of the clearest live examples of how Sheikh Hasina's return is already shaping diplomacy in real time. On July 17, 2026, Ministry of External Affairs spokesperson Randir Jaswal addressed Dhaka's renewed extradition request directly, saying that the request had been received and was under examination, adding that it was being considered in the light of legalities involved. That is notably careful proceeding language, not a rejection, but very much not the swift compliance Dhaka has been pushing for since its first formal request in December 2024. At the same time, I want to bring our attention to another statement by Foreign Minister S. Jaishankar, his own engagement with Bangladeshi counterpart Khalilur Rahman, the Foreign Minister of Bangladesh, in April 2026. They marked the first high-level bilateral contact since the BNP government took office. And even then, the extradition issue was raised without resolution. Analysts note that India's position centers on due process, with the Ministry of External Affairs emphasizing that any decision will follow established judicial and internal legal reviews rather than immediate political action, and that the 2013 extradition treaty itself contains an exception for offenses of a political character. So I think Taposh Bhai will know that this 2013 extradition treaty they have been talking about, it has a loophole that the extradition doesn't work when the person of interest is a political character and was politically assassinated or politically being assassinated. So that means India doesn't have to actually do anything in this case because Sheikh Hasina was unjustly and unfairly treated by the interim and the current government. So Jaswal has separately stressed that India remains committed to the interests of the people of Bangladesh, including peace, democracy, inclusion, and stability, the language that keeps India engaged without endorsing Dhaka's framing of the case. So this is significant on two levels. First, it shows India is not simply waving away a legitimate legal request out of loyalty to Sheikh Hasina. It is treating the matter as genuinely contested, invoking due process and treaty exceptions rather than stonewalling outright. That actually lends credibility to the argument that the tribunal verdict is not the open and shut case Dhaka presents it to be. Second, it shows the issue is now central to the entire bilateral relationship with Bangladesh. Bangladesh's own state minister has it publicly insisted that Hasina issue will not disrupt relation. So that means they think that doesn't matter whether they give back Sheikh Hasina or not, the relationship with India will be intact with Bangladesh. So that means, India may not have to take it very seriously because they're actually doing it as a part of the legal process. And for regional stability, the complete South Asia is watching. You know, the tension in Balochistan in Pakistan, they have been giving example of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman and the liberation war in Bangladesh, and Balochistan wants to be free. So they are closely watching what's happening in Bangladesh. And at the same time, our neighbors, India, Myanmar, and other countries around us, they're actually also watching us. And a fragile regional balance that already deals with Rohingya crisis, China-India competition, and shifting alignments across South Asia is already there. A government that struggles to control mob violence, that has seen the state minister overseeing foreign affairs explicitly link relations with India to Sheikh Hasina's question, and that faces a politically volatile homecoming of a former prime minister with a substantial base, is not a picture of regional stability. Activists can argue that Sheikh Hasina's return, if handled through fair legal process rather than repression, actually offers a path towards stability by resolving an open wound rather than letting it fester indefinitely as a permanent point of tension between Dhaka and Delhi is not going to be very well. And international investors, they're very, very tense because they're not quite sure about the economic and stability in Bangladesh. So the investors are very much looking into the matter very, very closely. So investors do not want to price in slogans, they price in risk. So reports from Indian economic analysts flagged concerns almost immediately after the 2024 transition about the impact of instability and anti-India's sentiment on cross-border investment and tourism, worth noting given how intertwined the two economies are. Add to that, the deeply controversial US-Bangla trade agreement is also being actually watched over. So at the end of the day, let me finish it off. So there is a lot of global media attention, a lot of economic attention, and a lot of political attention at the moment, which Sheikh Hasina returned to Bangladesh. So it will not be easy for them to oppress or repress Sheikh Hasina and Awami League activists at this moment. Thank you so much, Priyanka.
Thank you so much, Mola. We are actually over time, but I always have one question that I would like to ask all of us. But if we could just take like 30 seconds per person, my question would be, looking at 5 years, what kind of Bangladesh should emerge from this moment, regardless of political differences? And I would start with Taposh Bhai, and then Jihan Bhai and Mola Bhai. 30 seconds, go.
I am always the time quite positive that Bangladesh will definitely get out of this dark period, because there is always the time light at the end of the tunnel, and I believe that. And Sheikh Hasina is the right person to steer us into this light world, it's a lightful world. Just one thing I have to say, that even in the Islamic history, I'm saying these because in Bangladesh, the Jamatis need to know that even in Islamic history, there are hundreds of incidents where rightful leaders had to leave their country for the protection of their fellow men. But at the end of the day, they had the return of a hero. So that's the same thing waiting for Hasina, waiting for Awami League, and all of us who are going through this dark period at the moment. Thank you. Thank you for having me one more time.
The conspirators can read Sheikh Hasina off every titles, every honors, everything. What they cannot take away is that she is the daughter of Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, and Bangabandhu's blood still flows to her vein. So 5 years from now, what I envision is the same Bangladesh that Bangladesh was 2 years ago, destined towards greatness, destined towards achieving greatness by 2041. So I can see the future. Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina returning pretty soon, taking over Bangladesh. Bangladesh is supporting her. Again, Bangladesh regaining its identity, regaining what Bangladesh actually was, destined to achieve something great.
Thank you. And last, Mullah Bhai, here.
Yes, so I would like to envision that there will be protection of constitutional rights. There will be a respectful political culture, and Sheikh Hasina and Awami League activists. I actually would like to see this happen. That Sheikh Hasina and Awami League activists will be given a fair go in the judiciary, and that would lead towards economic stability, national reconciliation, upholdment of rule of law, and genuine democratic competition that will lead to strong institutional developments like judiciary, election commission, and security services. Thank you, Priyanka.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone that has been watching, and thanks to my co-hosts and my two honorable guests. It has been a wonderful time with you guys. As always, I encourage our audience to keep reading, keep questioning, keep learning from credible books, historical records, and verified sources. Democracies are straightened not only by elections, but by informed citizens. Thank you, everyone. দেখা হবে বিজয়ে। জয় বাংলা।
Thank you. Jai Bangla. Jai Bangla.